The wind cut through the valley like a blade that had forgotten mercy. Snow drifted across the road, settling on the shoulders of a man who hadn't slept under a roof in months. His name was Tom, and the only soul who still followed him was his dog, Finn, an old golden retriever with wise eyes and a limp that matched his master's. They walked slowly, boots crunching in the frost, following no map except the one that lived in Tom's heart, the one that said, "Keep moving, keep breathing, find warmth somewhere." Finn barked once, sharp and low, his tail twitching. Tom stopped. "You smell something, boy?" he murmured, voice cracked by the cold. The dog turned toward the trees, dark pines bending under the weight of fresh snow. Beyond the road, the forest looked endless and indifferent, but Finn's instincts had saved them more than once. Tom followed him off the path, boots sinking deep into the white. Each step crunched like breaking glass. The further they went, the quieter it became, until even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then Tom saw it at first just a shadow among trees, then a shape too big, too still to be imagined. A tree, massive, ancient, its trunk wider than a small cabin. Lightning had split it long ago, leaving a hollow at its center, tall enough for a man to stand in. "Would you look at that?" Tom whispered. The inside was dark, but not dead. Moss clung to the walls, dry leaves scattered like old memories. Finn sniffed the air, wagged his tail, and stepped inside. For the first time in weeks, Tom felt something like invitation. He crouched inside, running his hand along the curved wood. It was warm, somehow not from fire, but from age, from life still pulsing in the roots below. "You think it'll keep us dry?" Tom asked. Finn thumped his tail, which was as good an answer as any. Tom dropped his backpack, half empty and frayed, and sat down against the inner wall. Outside, the snow thickened into a curtain. Inside, it was quiet, still, safe. For the first time in months, he didn't hear the city's noise or the pity in strangers' eyes, only the forest breathing. He built a small fire just inside the entrance, careful not to scorch the bark. Smoke curled upward and slipped through cracks above. The light painted the wood golden, revealing patterns that looked almost like faces. "This place," Tom murmured. "It's a cathedral." Finn curled beside him, sighing deeply, as if agreeing. Tom took a small piece of bread from his pocket, broke it in half, and handed it to the dog. "Half each, like always." Finn licked his hand before eating, and Tom smiled a small, crooked smile that hadn't appeared in a long time. When dawn came, the snow had buried the path behind them. The world was white, endless, silent. Tom stepped outside, breath turning to mist. The forest glowed with morning light, the kind that makes even broken things look whole again. He turned back to the hollow tree, now catching the sun's reflection on its wet bark. "Guess we've got ourselves a house, huh, Finn?" The dog barked once, tail wagging. "All right then," Tom said. "Let's make it a home." He didn't know yet that this promise would change everything. The first days were survival. He cleared the ground, swept out old leaves, patched the largest holes with moss and bark. Each sound, the scrape of his knife, the soft panting of Finn, felt like music. He built shelves from fallen branches, lined the floor with pine needles, and made a small bed for himself and the dog. "You see, buddy," he said, "it ain't about what we lost. It's about what we can still build." Finn wagged his tail and lay his head on Tom's boot. The fire cracked softly, like applause. Every morning he walked to the nearby creek for water. The ice crusted the surface, but below it flowed clear and alive. He used a tin can to fill his bottle, then knelt and splashed his face. The cold burned, but it made him feel clean again. Sometimes he saw his reflection in the water unshaven, tired, but no longer defeated. Finn drank beside him, tongue lapping eagerly. "You're better off than me," Tom chuckled. "You don't worry about tomorrow. Maybe I should learn that from you." Finn tilted his head, as if to say, "Finally." At night, he listened to the forest. Owls called from far away. Wind whistled through hollow branches, and snow slid softly from the canopy above. The fire inside the tree painted shadows that danced along the walls, making the hollow feel alive. Tom often spoke aloud, his voice echoing gently in the space. "If anyone ever finds this place," he said one night, "I hope they see what we saw, not emptiness, but a chance." Finn shifted closer, resting his head on Tom's lap. Outside, the storm howled, but inside there was only warmth. After a week, Tom started decorating the space, not out of vanity, but gratitude. He found smooth stones by the river and arranged them in circles. He tied small branches together to make a chair, carved a spoon from wood, even hung his old watch long dead, but still beautiful from a nail. Each object told a story of loss, of effort, of small victories. "Look at us, Finn," he said one evening. "A man and a dog living inside a tree. If that ain't poetry, I don't know what is." Finn barked softly. "Right," Tom smiled. "It's survival poetry." Days turned into weeks. Birds began to return to the forest, the snow melting into rivulets that whispered through the moss. Tom built a small door from fallen planks, propping it with stones. He added a window, just a round hole covered with glass, from an old bottle he'd found near the creek. The light that poured through it turned the hollow into amber. "Feels like we live inside a lantern," he said, awestruck. Finn stretched, tail wagging. "Yeah, I know. Maybe we should charge rent." One afternoon, Tom discovered something extraordinary. Deep inside the hollow, beneath a root, there was a tiny spring. Clear water bubbled from the earth, filling a small natural basin. He cupped it in his hands, tasting it cold, pure, alive. "Would you believe that?" he said to Finn. "The tree's got a heart." He decided to leave it untouched, like a secret vein of life. That night, as the fire flickered and the tree creaked softly, Tom whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't to any god in particular, just to the place that had decided not to let him die. Once in a while, hikers passed nearby, though rarely in winter. Tom kept quiet, hidden behind the bark, watching their colorful jackets move between the trees. He didn't want to be found, not yet. The world had taken too much from him to trust it easily. But when one hiker dropped a glove, Tom waited until they were gone, then left it on a rock where it would be seen again. "Small kindness," he muttered. "Circle goes around." Finn wagged his tail, approving. Even outcasts can do good, Tom thought, especially outcasts. By the time spring arrived, green shoots were already pushing through the forest floor. The air smelled of rain and soil. Tom hung an old tin cup near the doorway to catch dripping water. Each drop sounded like a note, and together they made a song of patience. Finn spent his days outside chasing butterflies, barking at shadows, rolling in the moss. "You're getting soft," Tom teased. But truth be told, they both were. Peace was a strange kind of luxury, quiet, undeserved, but impossible not to cherish. One morning, Tom found a small bird trapped in the hollow, fluttering helplessly. He cupped it gently in his hands, whispering, "Easy there, little one." He opened the door, and it flew out into the sunlight. Finn barked twice, proud of his human. "You see that?" Tom smiled. "We're rescuing things now." He looked around at the cozy room they had built, the fire still crackling, the shelves full of little treasures. "Maybe the tree rescued us first," he added quietly. Finn sighed, stretching by the fire. "Yeah," Tom said. "Probably that." As the days grew warmer, Tom began to notice visitors' deer grazing near the clearing, foxes slipping silently through the brush. The forest seemed to accept him, as if it had been waiting for someone to care for this forgotten place. "We belong here," he told Finn, "not as intruders, but as caretakers." The dog wagged his tail in approval. Tom built a small wooden sign outside the hollow, carving words carefully with his knife. "A place to rest. Take nothing. Leave peace." One evening, as the sunset spilled gold through the glass window, Tom sat carving another piece of wood. He didn't know what it would become, maybe a bowl, maybe nothing. "Funny, isn't it?" he said to Finn. "People chase everything. Money, noise, approval. And here we are, rich, with quiet." The dog licked his hand. "You think anyone would believe it if they saw this place?" Tom asked. "That a tree gave us a second chance?" Finn tilted his head. "Yeah," Tom said softly. "Maybe that's the problem. Nobody looks long enough to see." That night, it rained. Not a gentle rain, a storm that hammered the forest, shaking the branches and roaring through the hollows. Tom feared the fire might die, but the tree held strong. Water streamed down its sides, but inside it was dry, steady, warm. He sat awake, watching the flicker of light and shadow, listening to thunder roll above. "She's protecting us," he whispered, as if the tree could hear. Finn pressed close against him, trembling slightly. "We're safe," Tom said, more to himself than to the dog. And for once, it was true. When morning came, the forest glistened with dew. The storm had washed everything clean, even the air smelled new. Tom stepped outside and looked up at the massive trunk, sunlight filtering through wet leaves. "You're a miracle," he said softly. "A big, wooden miracle." Finn barked once, tail wagging. All right. You too." He laughed, and the sound surprised him. Rich, alive, full. It had been years since laughter came without effort. "Maybe," he said to Finn, "we weren't lost after all. Maybe we were just being led." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Tom opened his old notebook. Most of its pages were blank, but he began to write. "Day 1, he wrote, "in a home that grew instead of being built. Found peace among roots and bark. The forest doesn't judge, only shelters." He looked at Finn, sleeping soundly, paws twitching in a dream. "We'll stay a while," he whispered. "Maybe forever." Outside, fireflies began to glow, flickering like stars among the trees. And inside the hollow, a man who had lost everything finally found something worth keeping. Spring unrolled like a green ribbon through the valley, slow and generous. Tom woke to birdsong and the soft weight of Finn's head on his boots. Light came through the round bottle-glass window in a honey-colored oval, landing on the floor he'd lined with woven pine needles. "Rise and shine, partner," Tom whispered, scratching Finn's ear. He stretched, set water to boil on the small iron stove, and opened the door. The world smelled of rain and young leaves. He stood there with his tin mug and thought, maybe the hardest part of life is remembering mornings like this exist. Work became ritual. Tom measured, cut, and fitted with patience he'd once given to jobs that paid in checks. Now the paycheck was dignity. He split cedar slats and set them into the curve of the trunk to make a low, round bench. He braided bark into ties for hanging mugs. He stitched a curtain from burlap he'd found caught on a fence, washing it in the creek until it smelled of clean water instead of rust. "We're not decorating," he told Finn. "We're thanking," Finn wagged, content to nap wherever the sun decided to lie down. He carved a niche for books, 3 paperbacks salvaged from a park bin, their corners soft with other people's afternoons. He repaired a cracked mirror and hung it where it caught a thin ribbon of light. The first time he looked, a stranger stared back. Gray in the beard, yes, but eyes clear, cheeks warm. He looked like a man with a place to be. The tree's inner walls began to shine from the oil he rubbed into them. Linseed mixed with patience. When the breeze moved through the hollow, the whole room seemed to breathe and answer. He coaxed a narrow staircase out of steps carved into the inner bark, spiraling up to a small loft he floored with planks. There he laid a mattress made of stitched canvas and dry moss. At night, he climbed with a lantern and lay beneath curving roots like the ribs of a ship. Finn curled at the base of the stairs. "Captain," he'd whisper, saluting the dark. The lantern cast a soft orbit of gold where dreams could dock. Wind outside combed the needles, and rain tapped the roof with gentle fingers that neither begged nor blamed. Wordless visitors appeared, a pair of deer that tested the air near the door, a red fox that looked in, decided against conversation, and vanished. Once a raccoon waddled through like an inspector, nosed the shelf, and left unimpressed. Tom kept a small bowl of water at the threshold for birds. Sometimes brave ones hopped in to drink while he sat still as furniture. "We're not owners," he told Finn. "We're neighbors, Finn." He approved by thumping his tail softly, the universal vote of a good dog who understands democracy better than most councils. Humans came next, as they always do. A hiker stumbled onto the clearing one afternoon and froze, hand lifted like a man seeing stained glass for the first time. "Is this?" "Home," Tom said, "not unkind. For me and the dog. You're welcome to rest." The hiker took off his pack and sat on the low bench, eyes big. He said little, drank water, and left a wrapped granola bar on the shelf without ceremony. Tom found it later with a note. "Your place reminded me how to breathe. Thank you." Finn looked smug, as if hospitality had been his idea. A trail runner brought a thermos of soup 2 days later, pressed it into Tom's hands with a shy smile, and ran off before gratitude could catch up. A retired forest ranger visited and left a bundle of old maps, pointing to springs and safer paths. A woodworker came with a handful of brass screws and a door latch he'd made from scrap. "It'll sit right there," he said, fitting it like a puzzle piece. Tom stood back, almost embarrassed by the way kindness multiplies when given a place to stand. The tree seemed to stand taller under the attention. The first real conversation beyond pleasantries arrived with a woman carrying a camera she handled like a violin. She introduced herself as Maya, a freelance journalist who preferred long walks to short quotes. "I heard rumors of a lantern in the woods," she said, "and a man who lives inside a tree." Tom smiled. "Rumors right about the lantern." She asked if she could sit a while. He poured tea into 2 enamel mugs and talked slowly, like a man who had learned the cost of words and the luxury of being asked for them without hurry. Maya didn't ask for tragedy the way some reporters do, with spoons and jars, eager to can it for winter. She asked about the stove, the bowl, the round window. She photographed Finn first, because everyone loves the right hero. Then she photographed the way light touched the roots, and the way Tom's hand laid flat on the wood as if listening for a pulse. "What do you call this place?" she asked finally. Tom looked around, considered, and said, "Grace." She nodded, as if they had decided something that had been waiting to be named. The article went up a week later under the title, "A Lantern in the Woods." It wasn't sensational. It read like a letter. She never called him homeless. She called him a builder of quiet, a keeper of warmth. People shared it not with outrage, but with relief, as if someone had remembered a door they could still open. Donations did not flood, but kindness did. Jars of nails, blankets, books, a tin of coffee with a note. "We brewed a pot for you in our kitchen and smiled more than usual." The forest learned new footsteps. With attention came questions. The county ranger hiked in, friendly but cautious. "We've got rules," he said, toes on the line between duty and delight. Tom nodded. "I've read your signs. No fires during bands, no trash, no cutting live wood. I mend, I don't take." The ranger looked around, touched the oiled wall with reverence. "This is the cleanest illegal thing I've ever seen." Tom grinned. "Illegal is a big word. Maybe we can trade it for needed." The ranger left with a promise to ask his boss about special permits and a second cup of tea. The permit did not arrive. Bureaucracies move like rivers in drought. They remember motion, but not direction. In the meantime, the rescue happened, not sensational, just decent. A storm rolled through, cracking a spruce near the trail. The tree pinned a young hiker's leg. Finn heard the cry first and led Tom like a compass. They braced the trunk with a fallen limb and levered enough to free the boy. Tom splinted the shin with straight sticks and a belt, flagged Maya with a strip of red cloth, and waited. When the EMTs arrived, the boy kept repeating, "He lives in a tree. He saved me." That story did what Maya's couldn't. It satisfied the world's need for cause and effect. Local news came with soft voices and cameras that tried not to spook the deer. Tom answered simply, "Anyone would have done it. The forest tells you what it needs if you listen." Finn posed beside the stove like a politician kissing babies. The county ranger returned with his boss and a printed document that smelled like compromise. "Provisional stewardship," the boss said. "You keep it safe, keep it open at reasonable hours, and we call it a cultural site while we figure out the rest." Tom read every line twice. The words were a bridge, narrow but sturdy. No permanent plumbing, no cutting live wood, fire safety checks, open to the public on weekends and afternoons. He looked at the tree, at Grace, and at Finn. "It'll mean visitors," he murmured. Finn's tail swept the floor. "Maybe that's the point," Maya said. "Not to hide your miracle, but to let it multiply." Tom signed with a hand that trembled like a leaf in a kind wind. He'd never owned anything the world recognized. Stewardship was better. It sounded like care with a job description. They prepared, not like for company, but for pilgrims who didn't know they were pilgrims yet. Tom built a second bench and a narrow standing shelf by the door with a wooden box labeled "Give, Take." People left shells, folded notes, a button that had outlived its coat. Tom set out pencils and cards stamped with a small acorn. "Leave a word, take a breath." Maya made a simple sign near the junction. "Grace, a tree home. Open when the lantern is lit." The first Saturday, 6 people came. By the third, 30. Children arrived with eyes like new coins. They ran their hands along the polished inner bark and whispered as if the room could hear them. Tom showed them the tiny spring. "The heart of the tree," he said. "We don't drink from it. We listen to it." Parents lingered, relief softening their faces. Here, nothing beeped. No one sold anything. The only price of admission was to stand still long enough for your lungs to remember they were not angry at you. Finn moved among them like a docent, accepting chin scratches as fair exchange for the tour. A teacher asked if she could bring her class. "We're learning about ecosystems," she said. "But maybe we're really learning about belonging." Tom nodded and set rules that felt like blessings. Shoes wiped at the threshold, voices no louder than the stove, nothing removed, something kind left behind, even if it's only a thought. A teen left a poem about bark and brotherhood. An old man left a photograph of a cabin he lost to taxes he couldn't pay. A woman left a ring with a note, "I said yes to myself today. Keep this where promises live." With visitors came the small scuff marks of love. A scrape on the bench, a fingerprint in oil, a pencil nub chewed thin. Tom kept a soft cloth in the niche by the door and wiped the walls each evening, not to erase evidence, but to remind the tree it was cherished. Maya brought a guest book. Tom kept it near the window. People wrote cities and dates and the weather when they arrived, as if gratitude needed coordinates. Finn learned the sound of the kettle's lid and trotted to the door when it rattled, ready to guide latecomers up the last rise. One afternoon, a city official in a suit 2 shades darker than doubt arrived with a smile that said no, even before his mouth did. "Attendance is rising," he said. "Liability is non-trivial." Tom listened, fingers light on Finn's collar. Maya stepped forward with printouts, testimonials, ranger reports, the rescue story, a spreadsheet of volunteer hours. "Non-trivial," she echoed, "is the number of people who walk out kinder than they walked in." The ranger cleared his throat. "We'd lose less by protecting this than by closing it." The official frowned, recalculating. "We'll revisit," he said, bureaucrat, "for we're losing this one today." By late summer, Grace had a rhythm. Lantern lit at 4, tree closed at dusk. Tea steaming on damp days. A basket of blankets that smelled faintly of smoke and pine. Tom added a small plaque made from a slice of limb. Letters burned in with a nail heated on the stove. Grace Tree, a small museum of hope. Beneath it, in smaller script, Steward, Tom, Greeter, Finn. When he hung it by the door, the tree seemed to settle, as if accepting its new name in public. "Museum," Tom said, rolling the word around like a marble glinting in sun. "Not for artifacts, for feelings." Finn leaned against him, content. The lantern flared, the path brightened, and people began to arrive, already whispering thank yous they hadn't spoken yet. Autumn arrived like a sigh, cool and golden, whispering through the forest that change was coming again. Tom sat outside the tree, sharpening a stick into a new signpost while Finn lay nearby, his muzzle now silvered with age. Leaves fell in slow spirals, carpeting the earth with fire-colored peace. The tree creaked softly, content. From down the path came laughter of family approaching. "You ready, old boy?" Tom asked. Finn wagged his tail once. "We've got guests again." He stood, brushed his hands on his jacket, and smiled. Somehow, being seen no longer hurt. The family entered the clearing as if crossing into a painting. "Is this it?" the mother whispered. "The tree house?" Tom chuckled. "Just a tree with good manners, ma'am." The little girl gasped when she saw the round window and the warm glow from within. "Can we go inside?" "Of course," Tom said. "Mind your step, And remember, this tree listens." The father laughed softly. But when he ducked inside, the laughter stopped. "It's beautiful," he said quietly, as though the walls deserved reverence. The mother ran her fingers along the polished bark. "You made all this?" "The tree helped," Tom said. Each visitor came with curiosity and left with calm. Teachers brought students, hikers brought stories, and even the skeptical city official returned once without a clipboard this time. "Had to see it for myself," he said. "My wife wouldn't stop talking about it. He stayed longer than planned, writing in the guest book before he left." Tom read it later. Sometimes policy should listen to poetry. That made him laugh until his ribs hurt. Finn barked as if laughing too, and Tom tossed him a biscuit. "You hear that, boy? We're changing bureaucrats now. That's real magic." Maya kept visiting, though less with a camera and more with bread, soup, and conversation. "It's strange," she said one afternoon. "People come here thinking they'll find you, but what they really find is themselves." Tom smiled. "I just opened the door." She glanced around at the light filtering through the amber glass. "And what about you, Tom? What did you find?" He looked toward Finn, sleeping near the stove. "A reason to stay still," he said. Maya nodded, as if that was the best kind of answer. Maybe it was. Winter crept back with cautious steps, brushing frost over the moss roof and whitening the ground. Visitors slowed, but never stopped. Some came bearing candles, others thermoses of cocoa. The lantern stayed lit through the cold months, its glow a promise in the dark. Finn's joints grew stiff, his gait slower. Tom built a small ramp beside the door so the old dog could still patrol the clearing. "We'll keep the fire low, buddy," he whispered one night. "Save your strength. You've earned the soft days." Finn laid his head on Tom's knee and sighed contentedly. On Christmas Eve, the clearing filled again, not with carolers, but with quiet souls carrying light. Dozens of lanterns hung from branches, turning the forest into a sea of gold. Maya stood beside Tom, watching. "They said they wanted to thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Tom asked, genuinely puzzled. "For reminding them that hope doesn't have walls." He swallowed hard, staring at the faces illuminated in the flickering glow. Some cried, some smiled, all silent. For a long time, he couldn't speak. Finally, he said, "I just built a place to rest." Maya smiled. "Exactly. The local newspaper called it the Museum of Hope." Photos spread online. The hollow tree glowing like a lantern in snow. A man and his dog greeting visitors by the fire. Donations appeared again. But Tom refused most. "The tree doesn't need gold," he said. "Just gentle hands." Still, with the ranger's help, he installed a simple path of stones, safe for wheelchairs and children. When the first visitor in a chair arrived, Tom watched as they touched the bark with trembling hands. "It's warm," the man whispered. "Alive." Tom nodded. "It remembers kindness. That's its trick." Finn's health began to falter. He slept longer, walked slower, barked less. Tom carried him up the steps some nights, whispering, "You carried me through worse, old friend." One morning, Finn didn't rise. The stove crackled, the tree hummed softly, but the world had shifted. Tom sat beside him for hours, hand resting on still fur. No tears came, just a deep quiet that felt like gratitude wearing mourning clothes. He buried Finn near the roots, where wildflowers grew in spring. On the headstone he carved one word, faithful. Then, softly, "You were the best part of me." Word spread again, this time through whispers. Visitors brought flowers and treats, placing them near Finn's grave. Children drew pictures of the dog with angel wings. He was everyone's friend, a woman said, kneeling to light a candle. Tom nodded, voice thick. He taught me how to belong. The forest seemed to agree. Birds nested lower, deer lingered longer. That night, the wind through the branches sounded almost like breathing. Tom sat by the fire, looked up, and whispered, "You can rest now, boy. I'll keep the light on." In spring, Finn's grave bloomed with wild violets. Tom built a small bench beside it for visitors. "He's part of the museum now," Maya said when she visited. "No," Tom corrected gently. "We're part of his story." She smiled. "Maybe that's the same thing." She handed him a letter, an invitation from the city's cultural council. "They want to make it official," she said. "A historical landmark," Tom frowned. "Landmarks are for things that stopped moving. This place still breathes." "Then call it a living one," she said. "A sanctuary." He attended the meeting, uncomfortable in a borrowed shirt. Officials talked of zoning, preservation, tourism. Tom talked of silence, peace, and bark. "If you make it fancy," he said, "it'll stop meaning what it means." The chairman, an old woman with kind eyes, nodded. "Then we won't change it. We'll protect it." The vote was unanimous. Grace Tree. The Museum of Hope became an official site, free to all, owned by none. Reporters clapped, cameras flashed, and Tom thought only of the dog who had never cared for applause. When he returned to the forest, Maya waited with coffee and the kind of smile that says, "You did it." "I didn't do anything," Tom said, sitting beside her. "The tree just kept standing." She looked at the branches overhead. "Maybe that's what doing something looks like." They watched the lantern flicker in the doorway. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Then I look around and realize this is what I was running toward all along." Maya nodded, eyes soft. "Home finds you when you stop hiding." He smiled. "Or when you grow roots." The next summer, busloads of children came from schools across the county. Tom told stories not of suffering, but of small miracles. He showed them how to listen to the creak of wood and the hum beneath their feet. "The earth talks," he said. "You just have to stop talking long enough to hear." Kids left drawings, notes, and songs. Teachers left silent prayers of gratitude. The museum became less a place and more a feeling, the kind that people carried home in their pockets like smooth stones, proof that something pure still existed. One afternoon, Tom found a young man sitting quietly inside, tears on his face. "You all right, son?" he asked. The man nodded, holding a folded eviction notice. "I just needed somewhere to sit." Tom sat beside him. "I used to think the world was finished with me," he said. "Turns out it was just waiting for me to show up." The man laughed through tears. "How do you do it? Stay hopeful?" Tom smiled. "Hope's not a mood. It's a muscle. You keep using it, even when it hurts." Later, Tom found the notice burned to ash in the stove. Maya returned with a book one day, glossy pages, photographs, and Tom's story told simply. Grace Tree, a museum of hope. He flipped through, stopping at a picture of Finn by the fire. "You wrote this?" he asked. She nodded. "All profits go to building shelters in other forests." He ran a hand over the page. "He'd like that," he said softly. "A dog's heaven is just more people being kind." She smiled. "And yours?" Tom looked around the glowing hollow. "Already here." Years passed gently. The forest thickened. The path wore smooth under countless grateful feet. Tom's beard turned white, but his eyes stayed the color of morning. When his knees began to fail, the ranger built him a small chair by the stove. He spent hours there, reading letters from visitors. One said, "I came here ready to end my life. I left ready to live it." Another, "I proposed here. She said yes." He folded them all and placed them in a wooden box labeled simply, "Proof." On his last winter, Tom grew weaker, but never bitter. The lantern stayed lit, tended by volunteers who called him Mr. Tom, even when he told them not to. One evening, Maya sat beside him, holding his hand. "You ready to rest?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Maybe just nap for a while." The fire crackled softly, shadows moving like slow waves. "Promise me," he said, "you'll keep it open, for anyone who needs to remember what hope feels like." Maya's voice broke. "I promise." He closed his eyes. "Then I can sleep easy." Tom passed quietly that night, with the tree humming low and the lantern still glowing. In the morning, light streamed through the bottle glass window like liquid gold. A note was found on his workbench, written in his careful, uneven script. "Don't mourn me. Just keep the fire small and the door open. Everything else takes care of itself." They buried him beside Finn, under the wild violets. The plaque between them read, "Caretakers of Grace." In time, others took up the watch: Maya, the ranger, the teachers, even some of the children who'd once sat cross-legged on the floor. The tree never closed. Candles were replaced, benches repaired, stories retold. Every year, on the night Tom passed, lanterns filled the forest again. The air shimmered with warmth, and someone always whispered, "Thank you." The forest answered in its own way, a long, low creak that sounded almost like contentment. Years later, a child visiting the museum asked her mother, "Who built this place?" The mother smiled. "A man who had nothing except love." The girl traced the bark with her tiny fingers. "Did he live here?" "For a while," her mother said. "And now he lives everywhere people are kind." The lantern flickered, wind rustling through branches. Inside the hollow, sunlight still touched the old stove, the shelves, the circle of stones, proof that hope doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. And in the heart of the forest, the tree kept whispering, "Home is where the light never goes out."